and some of them have not. I don't know who's on the call from whose office or whatever, but I believe that we all need to, put some support behind that, put letters of support. Because that's a big thing. If this facility doesn't get sold, if something doesn't happen, these guys need to be training. We need opportunities. We need new skills, and we got a skilled workforce that just brings more businesses in India, I think, opportunity. It's unfortunate we relied on the paper industry for the last 100 years to take care of Wisconsin Rapids, but now today they're not going to take care of Wisconsin Rapids anymore. So hopefully, you guys as representatives and mayor can bring some more different things in here. If it ends up being a repurposing of the mill for something else, we've got a workforce that's trained, and I think that DNA is. So we might ask for any of the representatives to send a letter to support that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll make sure that each of us do. Do you know if such a letter is circulated with the federal delegation? You're not sure? You said who had signed or not?
I know Ron Nye and Senator Baldwin have sent letters, but Senator Johnson, I guess, decided not to.
Okay.
Representative Tiffany, I'm not sure where.
Okay. Fair enough. So we'll reach out to make sure the federal delegation knows that we'd like to have them put some support together for that and get some letters out from each of their offices. Also, I think what we'll do individually as state reps and senators, we'll do that as well, or collectively if we can get together and do that as quickly as we possibly can. And we'll also mention the task force and then the intent of the task force to be behind that as well. As long as I've got you on the hook here, Tim, I remember back when we first got started, you mentioned that Denny Lauer was somewhat available to weigh in as district rep and be in some of those conversations moving forward on potential moving pieces for the next partnership. Have you had conversations with Denny about this at all since then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Denny was intricately involved on our side.
Good.
John Burns and I talk to Denny probably every single day.
Good. Okay.
So from everything from the co-op that's going on,
yeah.
We have obviously had discussions with that group. Denny has been involved. We're also involving people from our offices in Pittsburgh. Probably right up to Leanne Foster, the vice president of the paper sector.
Good.
Probably aware of it. So we're reaching out and doing what we can at that point.
Awesome. That's good. I knew there had been conversations in the last couple of weeks with Henry's group and USW and the city. So maybe Shane, if you had any information to throw in at this point, or we could wait a little bit if you want, or.
Yeah, I guess just quickly, we did meet with Margaret and learned about co-ops and Henry and their group and where they were at. And I think we're just trying, and Tim was there too, and the people from USW. And I think we're just at that point learning more so about co-ops and what this could potentially look like and what feasibility studies and just kind of learning next steps and what we need to do.
Okay. Amy Sue, I see you have your hand up. We can go to you for a second here. Morning.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning. I just would like to point out that the federal delegation has sent the letter to the Department of Labor for the TAA, and that was from Congressman Kine, Senator Baldwin, and Representative Tiffany. So that letter has been sent.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right. Next thing I wanted to get into, I think we'll just take that as a natural segue. You guys are doing great segues today, by the way. So I think we'll lead into some time with Henry to come on up and tell us a little bit on where things are going with the Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association.
I can do better with this off, actually. It gets tangled up in my hearing aids too. So where we're at since the last time we've met, we've actually met a couple times here. We just had a meeting again on Monday with the cooperative, and the steering committee met. The loggers did form their co-op. They elected a board. They elected a board president. They filed their articles of incorporation. They adopted their bylaws, that type of thing. And then, as you mentioned earlier, we did come down and met with the mayor and Kyle, I believe, and Tim and Chad and Margaret, who will be giving you, she's been gracious enough to guide us through all this so far because she's, and a couple of folks from UW have been very helpful as well. And so we're just kind of in the process of presenting this information to other groups, and we have changed. So basically, to get started, the steering committee was basically made up of a group of association members, and since then, they've broadened that out quite a bit. We're going to start asking other people to be part of the steering committee to bring in more expertise from other areas, from other groups and that type of thing, and others that might be interested in forming their own co-op to be part of the multi-stakeholder co-op. We've actually done quite a bit of research. We've had several meetings with a couple of groups that are pretty well known for their expertise in the paper industry. One is Fisher International, and I believe the other one is TAP, I think, or yeah. And we've had some discussions with them. We've also met with some major financial institutions as of yesterday, and we're getting more information from them on next steps. You know, how do you start looking at funding? How do you fund the feasibility studies? And what we're kind of waiting on right now is we, you know, based on our communications with First, so we know that MOIS is the group that will be doing the sale package for them. We do not have, as of last week, I do not have a contact there yet. I believe they're still in the process of putting their package together. So it's going to kind of see what that package comes out with, and if they're going to place any no competes on the mill or contingencies or any of that type of thing, because that's going to kind of determine how you might move forward with a feasibility study and what is the potential of the mill. You know, what can it make? What would be a long-term product? Because you have to have two things really secured: the raw material coming in and a customer on the other end to make it work long-term. And, you know, we've discussed right from the beginning, this is part of our cooperative effort, but who knows, in the end, maybe it won't be the feasible one. We hope it is, because it's the largest wood consumer in the region, but a lot of steps have to be taken to get us to that point, and I think we're pretty confident right now that we're taking the right steps to get the right information. So that's the update that I have.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions for Henry? I should do that, I keep forgetting.
I have some experience with co-ops. When you talk to the financial institution, what kind of advice did you get from them?
Actually, we've got very good feedback from them. We met with a major one yesterday that's very engaged in agriculture, and that type of thing. And I mean, I can just tell you from our perspective, we're seeing a lot of positive thoughts out there because this hasn't really been done before at this level. And they're pretty positive. I mean, they're giving us a lot of guidance, and they've offered us to give us a lot more guidance. They're going to, I think, do some documentation so that they can share more information with us. I forgot the term of the thing they got assigned to not release.
Non-disclosure.
Yeah, confidential information, basically. So we're talking at that level, and they've shared with us a little bit of their experience at financing at this level and what's needed and that type of thing. So, but I would say it's very positive energy toward this project.
Great.
Maybe, and I'll put you in, if you haven't talked to Brett Kornblatt yet with MOLIS, I'll put you in contact with Brett. So if you haven't had a contact information for him yet, I'll make sure you get that. We just got put in touch with him this week.
Okay.
So make sure you got that too. So, all right, I think it'd be a great transition again then, as long as we're talking about co-ops, to have Margaret come on up and give us her time on what we're looking at as far as the co-op, what it means, how it works, what we're going to be hopefully getting ourselves into here. Welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm going to bring my presentation up first.
You want to show up top? Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll take my, and I'm going to do this as a co-presentation. My name is Margaret Bow. I'm with USDA Rural Development. I'm based over in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And I've been involved in helping people organize cooperatives since 1998, helping my home state here of Wisconsin. I've organized over 30 co-ops over the years in all kinds of different industries. And now I'm on the national office team trying to be a resource with the various co-op development centers across the country with the resources of the federal government. But I get the good pleasure of remaining based here in central Wisconsin. And I'm going to co-present with Kelly Maynard. She is also a cooperative development specialist, but she is with the University of Wisconsin Center for Cooperatives. And we're very fortunate in Wisconsin to have this resource of the UW Center for Co-ops. It's been with us since 1961, and it has probably the best website in the English language about everything that you could possibly want to know about cooperatives. And so they are also engaged in hands-on co-op development. So with that background, wanted to share an idea of what would community ownership look like for the Wisconsin Rapids Mill. And yeah, if you would, thank you for being the Vanna White.
Just say slide, Mark.
Okay, thank you, John. So just as Henry mentioned, the Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association and the people that are loggers, truckers, suppliers, everyone that's associated with harvesting timber in Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan and Michigan, have been toying around with how do those professionals start to take control of their industry that is increasingly out of control and having ownership either in other states, in other countries, by private equity firms. It's no longer the good old days of consolidated being owned here and decisions being made here in Wisconsin Rapids. So if I understand correctly, Henry, and Henry, please correct me. I don't want to give any misinformation. But the Wisconsin Timber Professionals Association, along with the Wisconsin County Forest Association, had some dollars that they put into doing a feasibility study on what would it look like, what's happening with the timber and the processing of the timber. And, I'll show a slide, the next slide up with some of those results. But as a result of that, the timber professionals came together and formed the cooperative, the Timber Professionals Cooperative. The Articles of Incorporation were signed on July 28th. It became an official legal entity on August 3rd, if I remember correctly. So there is a cooperative, a shared services co-op of loggers and truckers. And right now, that co-op is in the process of trying to identify folks to do the feasibility study to take a look at the Wisconsin Rapids Mill. Is it viable? What could it look like? What could be processed there? And from conversations that the co-op has been having, wanting to reach out to others in the community, be it community members, be it employees, be it other suppliers, be it end users, to possibly co-own a mill together. The mill's been here for 126 years. What can keep it here for another 126 years? But having the ownership and the control local. So the results of that pulp and paper industry research that was done, and it shows that over $400 million is spent on buying pulp from other places. And that's unfortunate because in Wisconsin, we have capacity, we have double the capacity to harvest more timber than it's actually being harvested. So there seems to be a bottleneck. There are 34 paper mills in the state, but there were 8 pulp mills providing raw product. Now there are 7. And so the pulp in particular looks to be quite a bottleneck, but there are other possibilities with that. Did I paraphrase that pretty well, Henry?
Yep, you did good.
Okay, thank you. But, if there's anything else you want to,
To get it pretty good, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so just to be clear, this study was actually started like way before Versoil decided to close.
Yeah.
We were looking at the capacity of how much wood we're growing 2.5 times, roughly 2 times, I should say, more than we're harvesting. And even with that, there's 50% mortality out there right now. So how do we use that wood? Can there be another industry in Wisconsin that could use up some of what we're growing? Because the only way to have a healthy forest is to maintain it through sustainable management. And so that's ultimately the goal, is to make sure we keep a healthy forest here. We need industry to take up the wood that we're growing. So that was the main goal.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Any questions? Yes.
How does our state species mix match up with what's imported?
You mean for the non-pulp that's important?
Yes, yeah, if you make the assumption that we would want to take that.
Should
repeat
that.
Okay.
Within Wisconsin, could we support that?
For the benefit of the people that are on the phone, I'd like to repeat the question. What does the state species mix look like? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, relative to what's imported.
Relative to what's imported.
Yeah, we have, I don't have that information right on me, but we did do some work on that with the study. And we know that we couldn't take over all this that's imported because there's other things involved in it. There's fiber length, all that type of thing, the type of paper you want to make, but we're pretty confident that there's some of this could be done in state with the wood that we're growing, with the northern hardwood, we have that type of thing. And even with the softwood, we seem to have a lot of softwood pulp that we don't have anywhere to go with at the moment. So that's without getting the exact numbers.
Yes.
The answer.
Yeah, to paraphrase what Henry said, there seems to be a good species. Actually, Henry, if you wouldn't mind coming up and repeating that.
Sure.
Thank you. You're the industry expert, I'm not.
Yeah, so basically the answer to the question is that I don't have the exact percentages of species mixed with me, but we're pretty confident with the northern hardwoods that we're growing and the amount of timber that we're growing, we could supply some of the fiber that's now being imported. Obviously, there's lots of different things that determine what imports are. There's trade agreements, there's fiber, but one of the things that we've really focused on a little bit as an organization is that we feel like the cost in America has been driven up because we follow a lot of certification processes. We follow a lot of rules and regulations, and some of the pulpwood that's coming in from, I would not believe for 1 minute that there aren't other countries that don't have issues with environmental issues where some of the pulp's coming from. And we follow really stringent certification standards in this country to produce product. So it would be really, I think a little bit, it behooves us to really check into that and make sure that we could be using more of our sustainably grown timber to provide some of the pulp that we're talking about in this study.
Thank you. Any other questions for Henry before he puts his mask back on? Any questions from the online audience?
I don't have a good way of knowing with the presentation up like
Okay.
this, so maybe we'll visit Margaret after you've presented.
Okay, good. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So what we're exploring right now has been inspired by a small community in Quebec, Canada. I don't speak French, so I'm not going to to explore my ignorance in trying to pronounce. It's called Sacred Heart in English, a little town of just under 2,000 people on the north shore of the St. Lawrence Seaway, way up in Canada, in Quebec, French-speaking area. And they had a sawmill, not a paper mill, not a pulp mill, but a sawmill, a much smaller operation, obviously, than what we are talking about here in Wisconsin Rapids. But there was a sawmill that was built back in 1975. And over a period of 10 years, it went through 3 different bankruptcies, different ownership stakes, and it was finally shuttered for 30 months. And the town was said, enough. We have had it. We want to take control of this major industry that is the lifeblood of our economic development in the town of Sacred Heart. And so what they did was the local community, along with the provincial government, along with Desjardins Credit Union System, which is a powerhouse financial co-op in Quebec, as well as other parts of Canada, they came together and started exploring. And the sawmill went up for sale, and they bought it in liquidation. And what they did was they pooled their resources and they formed 3 different entities to co-own what they called Boisaco. Bois, B-O-I-S, means wood in French. And so they formed this entity called Boisaco, and it was co-owned by the mill workers. The mill workers formed a cooperative. The loggers formed a cooperative. And then the community formed an investment group, and it was comprised of, I believe, 432 small investors. No single investor, no single household could put more than 5% because they want to make sure that they had diversified ownership of that particular sawmill. And so those 3 entities came together, formed Boisaco. They bought the mill in liquidation, and they started to share. You know, they started to operate it. And one of the strategic decisions that they made was that 55% of the profits would be reinvested in a reserve fund for updating the equipment. And then over time, they started buying or forming different companies that would use either waste product or would use their primary product coming out of it. And so they have 5 different entities. And over time, they are doing quite well, thank you. They've got 700 employees at both at Boisaco and those 5 different companies that they own. One makes paneled doors. Another one makes horse bedding with the shavings. Another one makes pellet for heating. One is a broker, and another one, Graniculo, I can't remember off the top of my head what the other one does. But in this town of 2,000, they, over 35 years, they have built up and stabilized and taken control over their economic destiny. And over the years, we've been inspired by that story. I've had the pleasure of working with Don Peterson and now working with Henry. And this story has really resonated with the loggers and the truckers. So with that, I would like to introduce Kelly, if she's on, to give a little update on exactly, we've been bantering the word cooperative. So let's define what exactly is a cooperative. So Kelly, if you are on.
I am on. Can you hear me okay? I just don't know.
Sure. Yes.
Okay,
we
great.
can hear you in the room.
Great. Yeah, thank you everyone for allowing me to join remotely. I'm joining from Belleville, Wisconsin, about a half hour south of Madison. And as Margaret said in the introduction, I work at the UW Center for Cooperatives, which is based on the UW-Madison campus. So as Margaret was saying, when we say cooperative, what do we mean? It is a business structure that is defined at the state level. So in Wisconsin, we have 2 cooperative statutes, and all cooperatives that incorporate, that form in the state, incorporate under one of those statutes, and then they're considered cooperative corporations. And basically, it's a business owned by a group of people and controlled democratically by that group of people. So these three kind of hallmark characteristics, we call folks members oftentimes, but really what they are owners. So this group, however defined, owns the business. One member, one vote. They elect a board. Members each get one vote to elect a board. The board makes a lot of policy and other decisions. Also, one board member, one vote. And when there is profit, that is distributed back to the membership, it doesn't disappear away from the community. And it is distributed to the membership in proportion to their use of the cooperative. So let's say next slide. So we often define co-ops by who are these folks owning the business together. So in Wisconsin, a lot of us are familiar with producer-owned cooperatives in the agricultural sector. Organic Valley being an example of in organic dairy. There are a lot of dairy co-ops. There are a lot of grain, produce cooperatives, right, that are owned by the farmers who sell their goods through the cooperative. Consumer-owned co-ops span a lot of different sectors. The example on this slide is the rural electric cooperatives that are owned by the households that receive power from them. Grocery co-ops are usually consumer cooperatives. Credit unions are financial cooperatives owned by the folks who have who use the financial services at the banks. Examples like Ace Hardware. A lot of people think of Ace as a franchise, but a shared service co-op allows businesses or nonprofits or governments to do together what's hard to accomplish individually. Some of the services that these kinds of co-ops provide are bulk purchasing, warehousing, distribution, marketing, and they allow the shared service co-ops allow small business owners to compete with big box retailers and other large market forces. So each Ace Hardware store is its truly owned independent business, and they are in this co-op together for marketing and bulk purchasing and other purposes. Worker-owned co-ops, right? Those are owned by the employees of the business, and these can exist in virtually any sector. There are only about 460 some across the U.S. currently, but it's a type of co-op in which there's a lot of interest. It's being seen increasingly as a way to transition business ownership for small businesses where the owners may be looking to retire, selling the business to the employees as a cooperative. In Wisconsin, we have examples in the home care space, solar installation, engineering, recycling, catering. Union Cab is a cab cooperative based in Madison. And then I believe Henry mentioned this term, multi-stakeholder cooperative. This, and actually, if you advance to the next slide. So in Wisconsin, not all states across the country have statutes that allow for this, but in Wisconsin we do. So this multi-stakeholder model, also sometimes called a hybrid co-op or a solidarity cooperative, brings together 2 or more classes of membership. And by classes, we don't mean, one class is higher or, lower than another. It just, it's bringing folks from perhaps different places in along the supply chain, representing, different sectors coming together around the same table to run a business together. So this example of Fifth Season Cooperative, it's a cooperative in the local and regional food system space. And it's owned not just by the farmers, the farmers are one class of member, employees are another class, the distributors who they work with to distribute the aggregated food are a class, the end buyers, they work with a lot of institutions in their area. This co-op is based in Viroqua. Processors and producer groups. So this co-op has a lot of different membership classes. And when they set up, they all negotiated how many seats each class would have on the board, but they're still, stick by that principle of one member, one vote to share the power. And when you have co-ops like this, right, the different classes bring different interests to the table. It can lead to long discussions, the decision making. You have to navigate the decision making, but it's a way to navigate complex systems and have everyone at the table to seek commonalities as opposed to kind of butt heads and emphasize differences. So I'll say, in terms of the thinking about what kinds of, I'll address this worker co-op slide. In Wisconsin, these are some more examples of worker-owned cooperatives. We mentioned Union Cab, based in Madison, so it's owned by the drivers and phone operators and maintenance staff. Isthmus Engineering is engineering and manufacturing is a worker-owned cooperative, also based just outside Madison. Just Coffee is a coffee roaster and distributor owned by the workers. Cooperative Care is a rural home care cooperative based in Watoma, Wisconsin. So it's basically it's a women-owned home care business that provides care largely for seniors. Northwind Solar, based near Stevens Point, is an example of a company that was originally formed as an LLC and then converted to a cooperative. So they, in 2015 or 16, I think 16 or 17, they converted to be a worker-owned cooperative. And so these are all different sizes. I think one of the questions that we get is, when we think about these co-op examples that we mentioned, and then in the context of this mill in Wisconsin Rapids that had, roughly 900 employees, is, that's a very different scale. How large are these co-ops, and could the model work here? And there are some very large worker cooperatives in the United States. Cooperative Home Care Associates, which is based in the Bronx in New York, has about 2,000 worker owner members. And it is an example of a union co-op that Margaret will talk about. So I just want to say that in the context of the mill, there are a couple of ways to think about how a co-op or co-ops might form here. So we have the timber professionals cooperative, the loggers and truckers and folks coming from the raw material side of things. You could have a multi-stakeholder model where there'd be one cooperative enterprise that had classes like for workers, potentially for sorry, this is now I'm getting a little bit off the slides, but it could have classes like the loggers and truckers, like the workers, maybe the end users, or as we've talked about, this community investment, like the Boisaco model. An alternative, it would be that each kind of group, representing kind of a type of interest could form its own entity, co-op or otherwise, and they come together and form and join like a second tier cooperative enterprise, which more closely mirrors the Boisaco model. So there's a lot of models here, and that might all seem very kind of like a lot, but we have a lot of flexibility with how this model gets used here in Wisconsin.
Okay, so thank you for that, Kelly, and thank you for that background on different examples of worker cooperatives. We wanted to share with you a new model that is out there, and it's called that one slide, thank you, a union cooperative. And because the United Steelworkers does have a successorship provision on the mill, meaning that whoever the next owner of the mill is, they get the union. The union becomes part of it. So to honor that, we just wanted to explore with you something called a union cooperative. And the idea is that it combines the benefits of worker ownership and workplace democracy with the strengths of the labor union model. And so you would have employees covered by collective bargaining agreements to handle day-to-day operations with such a large mill that you have those systems in place, but combining that with worker owners sharing in the co-op's profits and losses. When we talked about patronage refunds, that the worker members would share in the profits. So wanted to throw that out there. The next slide. That example that Kelly shared with us, the largest worker cooperative in the country is called Cooperative Home Care Associates, and that is the model in the South Bronx that inspired those of us in Waushara County to form Cooperative Care. Cooperative Care is the first rural home care worker co-op in the country, so very much inspired. And so CHCA is a real leader in the home care industry. It was formed back in 1985 with the welfare to work issues that were going on. A group of social entrepreneurs came together and with a group of 12 women formed a home care agency, cooperative, and it has grown and grown, and it became unionized about 10 years ago in order to have representation by SEIU, especially in New York City with some of the issues that are going on there, and because they had grown so large to handle member relationships and to do that well. So wanted to throw that out there that though a lot of worker cooperatives tend to be a little bit smaller, Union Cab being about 225 member owners, a cooperative care being 40 member owners, there is such a thing as a 2,000 member strong worker co-op out there. So next slide. Wanted to share with you that all cooperatives worldwide subscribe to a set of principles, 7 cooperative principles. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because if you're interested, you can go to the University of Wisconsin Center for Co-op's website and learn more about it here. But there are just a couple of things to point out that make cooperatives special as compared to other business types. And open and voluntary membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, because these are businesses and members need to have a voice in it. Autonomy and independence, education, training, and information. This is critical. If you are going to co-own a business together, You need training in the skills to understand the financials, and you need good communication, a lot of transparency to understand what are the issues going on with that business. So open book management, a lot of cooperatives, especially worker cooperatives, use that management style in order for everyone to have an understanding of what's going on. With Isthmus Engineering Cooperative in Madison, the member owners will actually meet for an hour or two, I believe it's every Wednesday afternoon down there, to give an idea. So everyone has an idea of what projects are underway, what potential deals are happening, who's off-site doing what. So everyone has an idea of what's going on so that they can ride out the waves of boom and bust that happen with that particular industry. Back in 2008, 2009, when the Great Recession happened, everyone in that co-op had an idea of what was going on and what was coming down the pike. And so they had some very frank discussions with one another and agreed to cut back wages so that they did not lay anyone off. And they said to a couple of people, hey, you know, aren't you thinking about doing that cross-country motorcycle trip? This would be the year to do it, type of thing. You know, so they had honest discussions amongst themselves. They kind of cut back their hours. Once the economy started up again, boom, they were ready to go. They were first out of the gate as compared to other firms in their industry. So, and we've heard about that with worker cooperatives across the world, that transparency, good communication, people are aware of what's coming. They make a decision to kind of scale back, avoid layoffs, but boom, they're right there, ready to go again. And we're playing around with the slides a bit. Cooperation amongst cooperatives, co-ops helping each other out. And then because cooperatives are locally owned, they are rooted in community, there is that principle number 7, concern for community. So if we go on to the next slide eventually, playing around with the slides, so sorry about that. Thank you. Okay. Cooperatives have a set of values that they all strive for internationally. And if you look at those values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity, and if you look at the first two values, you think, oh, self-help, self-responsibility. That sounds like a more conservative leaning, pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps mentality. But then if you look at the values of equity and solidarity, gee, that sounds like more liberal, progressive ideas. The point being, it's all there. Cooperatives can really span political and ideological divides. And so as long as people with enlightened self-interest in it for the common good, you can cross those boundaries. You can be in it together for a common purpose. Next slide. So Kelly, if you want to touch upon this, possible next step.
Sure, yeah. So this is our kind of last slide for today, and we just wanted to address, you know, this is a lot of information. Where would we go from here? We know that it's important to get a feasibility study done to understand, you know, what can be manufactured at the mill, what operations are viable, and what are the financing options there. So, you know, those are really big and important questions that, you know, anyone considering ownership will want to answer. You know, kind of concurrent with that, there can be further exploration of the co-op model. You know, we talked about a couple of models today. You know, and how would unions, the established unions, interface with any co-op or cooperatives? That is absolutely a role. Kind of a place where Margaret and I can play a role and are happy to be of ongoing support and a resource. And then, of course, if any of what we've talked about today is kind of sparked some interest and ideas for people, getting multiple potential stakeholders in conversation with each other. So we have the Timber Professionals Cooperative that formed But who else at the table is interested in being a part of this? Henry mentioned a steering committee for the potentially related to purchase of the mill. That's the term in co-op world. That's the term we use for the group of people working together to explore a cooperative idea. So that's the steering committee before there's anything formally incorporated. And we can help be a resource for those conversations as well. And then, of course, obviously, this is this mill is huge. There's a purchase is a lot of money, and so who are the equity partners that could be out there? So these things, this isn't necessarily one has to happen before another. And we want to honor that there are some really big and important questions that have to get answered to know what makes sense going forward. And then the next slide, I believe, just has Margaret and my contact information. And please, anyone should feel free to reach out to either of us, whether it's related to the Rapids Mill or if this has sparked some other cooperative ideas or interests for you. We are here to be a resource.
Any questions? Yes.
This seems like a no-brainer, but the key is to buy it right. Once you have the corporation, once you have the articles in place and everything. If we run into another downturn in the economy, I think I know the answer to this question. We know that the members of the co-op get all the profits. What happens if we have another 40% drop in sales, like Perso had?
There could be apportionment of losses. There could be a scaling back. That's part of co-ownership.
So the members have to come up with the money. You go to the bank and try to borrow some money.
Or
and possibly somebody, I don't know what the articles say about how much ownership one individual can have, but say one person wants to buy 51% of the co-op. It's not really a co-op anymore. 51% rules.
And that's why it's critical to structure this well. The state of Wisconsin, Kelly had mentioned two different state statutes, Chapter 185 and Chapter 193. They both have provisions about how much control entities can have, especially if you're looking at the Chapter 193. Yeah, it's important to structure this well so that reward and pain is spread out. Yeah, and once again, this is why it's critical to have good ongoing communication, transparency, so people understand what's going on, so that hopefully things can be a little more proactive, especially looking at other markets and gearing up for other opportunities so that you don't end up in that pain point again. Good question.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? I didn't step anybody's toes there. Good. Thank you again. I can't appreciate how much, or can't actually appreciate you doing this for us and stepping in. And same for you, Kelly. Thank you very much as well.
Yes, happy to be there, sort of.
Right, exactly. As much as we all can be. So in the traditional sense, we usually try to stick to our hour, so we'll try to stay as close as we can to it, but I do have some more topics I wanted to get to today. Just a follow up on this, I wanted to kind of coordinate, and again, segue, everybody's doing great segues today, so great job keeping that up, Margaret, for us. I wanted to segue a little bit to WEDC and see if Stacy was on with us to kind of talk a little bit about what WEDC could be available for as far as helping with the feasibility study. I think there's been conversations about that already. Stacy, with us?
I am with you. Hello. And we have Secretary Missy Hughes with us as well. So,
welcome, Secretary. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Missy. I'm going to let Stacy do the update because I have to jump at the top of the hour. But I just want to thank Kelly and Margaret for the great presentation on co-ops and If anybody is interested in talking with me about how it works inside the co-op and how kind of all these principles can come together, they can seem a little overwhelming, but they really do work inside of the co-op. And if anybody wants to explore that more, just talking with me. I worked for Organic Valley for 16 years. So thank you, Margaret and Kelly, for the great presentation, really thorough and provocative.
Thanks, Missy. So I've been involved with each of these meetings. I've attended the steering committee meetings, the new board of director meetings, in an attempt to make sure that I'm up to date and ready to go once a decision is made about the feasibility study. So as Henry had mentioned, we've seen a few different proposal options. So right now, I believe the group is working to really kind of fine tune what it is they need to have included in the feasibility study, how extensive and inclusive it needs to be. And at that point, we at the WDC, again, we're part of the team and ready to act once that decision has been made.
Okay, so I didn't know if we had any direct WDC programming options as far as once the scope and breadth of the feasibility study is there, can we, is there something, we've got an idle site program, certified site program. Do we have something within WDC that's technically set aside at this point to kind of help out with that advancement of the co-op feasibility study?
We do. We have a target industry program. And so again, and we've had extensive discussions with both Henry and Don about that.
Good.
So absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Second, I wanted to reach out to maybe Todd or Tim and maybe see about that second part of it from the workers' perspective. If there's coordination, maybe if it's just beyond USW, then maybe, Todd, there's some coordination that could be done on your end to coordinate USW and other unions into furthering discussions on potential participation. And again, even Tim, to take it up to Denny and run it up the chain more. I know you've had those discussions already, but just to see what exists as far as UW or USW's interest in moving forward, whether it's with other folks who are represented there or whether it's on USW's own behalf to be a part of that cooperative structure.
So we actually have a call on Friday to discuss this further. So
okay.
Until we talk with Dan and Danny Lauer and Cora Bachner at Pittsburgh on this.
Okay. Could you update me Friday after the call and let me know? I don't want to do this every other week or every week. I'd like to do as much as real time as we possibly can. Okay. Thank you. And then back on the agenda, sorry, you got me thinking about all kinds of stuff, so good job. I appreciate that. Back on the actual agenda, I think the next step that I wanted to do is definitely make sure that we get Melissa's contact information to Henry today. So we've got Brett's contact information. We'll get that shared as well so we can make sure that any parameters of what Verso may or may not include as a non-compete or other items could be presented directly instead of a waiting period here. So we'll definitely reach out and make that happen as quick as we can. Beyond that, I wanted to ask about if we had DWD on the Zoom call or the Teams meeting. Is DWD here?
I think Representative DWD may not be here, and if they are, please interrupt me. I've got a few statistics on the UI effort, and I can either walk through these for you or I can just give you what we've got here. We've got the weekly report that we get, I think, every 2 weeks. Hi, everyone. I'm John from Representative Krug's office. DWD was unable to be here today, but we do get a report from them every 2 weeks about how the effort is going to keep up with unemployment compensation. And we've peaked. We were at, they created a special avenue for us in the legislature to email cases to them in March. At one point, they were getting almost 3,000 emails a week. It's now down to half that. And they brought in a new mechanism. There are telephone numbers that we are supposed to give to people to call looking for help. And I think, like all of their systems, they're struggling mightily to get this done. The telephone number system I think sounds great. I think they're going to improve it in the next week or two. Candidly, it's been a little rocky right now. The department has given me some numbers here, and these are their numbers and their work, and I'm passing them on with, I think, their permission. They have processed 51,500 claims as of August 5th. 40,700 have been approved. They've denied 10,000. There are a couple of moving pieces in the UI situation that many of you are probably aware of, but I'll mention them briefly. The department has determined that in addition to whatever unemployment a person might be eligible for, SSDI recipients were at first not thought to be eligible for PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, which is a federal program. The department now thinks they can do that. There is a mechanism for it. We have information in our office or in Senator Teston's office. And that's really the biggest development that I wanted to share today. If you have someone who has a problem with their unemployment, please have them get in touch with their legislator. We can help them. The inquiries have to come from their own state legislator, so there's been a little bit of a handoff sometimes. If someone rings up the wrong office, we have to pass it to the legislator that represents them, just as a matter of bureaucracy. But we do have a way to daylight here. The department has broken these cases down into three sorts, and essentially we have a mechanism. When we pass these cases to DWD, we have a mechanism to earmark them, if applicable, as urgent. Someone is about to be foreclosed on, someone is about to be evicted, we have no more food. If a situation is urgent, the department tells me they can generally figure it out in a week. If a situation is not urgent, it's going to be longer, and it's going to depend a little bit on which stage of resolution the case is at when we bring it to their attention. But the system is working in a rough and ready, approximate fashion. We've had a rash this week of people who've kind of been hanging for a long time. But we're figuring it out, and if people from Verso or people from the casino in Nakusa have a problem, we will figure it out. So that is what DWD asks me to share with you today.
So the other reason I wanted to bring up, DWD and unemployment was obviously to have a conversation if we've heard of any bottlenecks, any challenges, any delays. Those are things that are going to be ultimately important to us from the employee's perspective. So if any of that information has become apparent, please share that as soon as possible. We've been told by DWD we've got a special team, quote unquote, that can be utilized to process claims from the idling. So if there's anybody that knows of anything that's going on that's not working out in that arena, let me know. Also, as you know, President Trump signed an executive order, I think it was Saturday, to extend the additional payments to $400 a week, but there's some caveats to that. So I wanted people to understand today what that caveat meant is with the president's executive order, not through an act of Congress, there's going to be a struggle to determine where that funding for that's coming from, first of all. Second of all, that $400 additional extra per week is only if the states pick up the $100 portion of that $400. We've not heard from the governor's administration, and I haven't, to be fair, I haven't asked yet. We haven't heard whether Wisconsin is going to pick that up or not. We also understand from past conversations with DWD, when we change unemployment on the fly, it is a difficult process. So people who had heard that there was an executive order signed Saturday were asking where their additional $400 a week is. It's not going to materialize for a few weeks. But again, when we went back to the first extension of that and the $600 per week, it took quite a while for that to be instituted here in Wisconsin, but I would encourage everybody who's either listening, watching, or can share information to encourage people to keep filing their weekly claim. And as they're filing that weekly claim, if they're getting information back from DWD that's not jiving, get a hold of us and work through either John or Jim's here from Senator Teston's office. So our offices can try to make sure that we can navigate that. That's probably one of the most important things we're dealing with in the last couple of weeks here as we work towards solutions. Is making sure that we can cover some of those shortfalls that exist. Another update I wanted to give from the administration is that Brett Kornblatt that I mentioned from Moelis has been in contact with Hank Newell with the governor's administration on the process that's moving forward with the presentation of the mill to other potential investors. We've not heard from Hank yet, and I don't know if Hank's been joining us on task force meetings or not, but we will be definitely getting an update from Hank this week as we dive in a little bit more into MOLIS and their process as well. So I think that's where we're at with state agency updates, unless there's anybody on the meeting virtually that has a update from a state-related agency or legislative office.
I think not.
Katrina, yes, go ahead. Jump right
Hi,
in.
everyone. I've got an update. So I did check with the Department of Workforce Development again, just to clarify, regarding unemployment insurance. So barring any complicating factors, the benefits should be able to be processed relatively quickly, since we know, the quick claims process. The reason should be easy. They probably won't go through adjudication. It's the same thing that I said last time. So I just want to clarify that we don't really anticipate any complicating factors here. And then secondly, I want to mention the unemployment insurance issue as well. So the way that it works is, it's really $300 a week. And, that $100 a week extra is optional. So states could do it, but they'd also allow states to already count that 100 of the 300, et cetera, per week of unemployment towards that optional $100. So it really, the way that it's written, it's really $300 a week and not $400. So to require the states to chip in that 25%, they have two options to fund that share. So they could count the first $100 they pay in weekly benefits to meet that requirement. So the other thing they could do is use CARES Act funds, but most of it has been earmarked by the states already or spent. So I think we have a lot of questions on the state level about how this would be implemented. So I just want to point that out, and I'm going to be asking DWD those questions as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that too. It's nice to have a double up on that, because I think, as we mentioned early on in this process, to make sure that we advocated for that extension of the additional benefit was the number one priority. And it's great that Congress has been talking about it, and it's good that the president signed something with an intent for it, but making it work is an entirely different thing. And right now, it doesn't seem like it's this executive order is not exactly going to work with the way Wisconsin systems work. So we're still hopeful that Congress is still going to get together and hash out a deal in the next week or so. As far as that goes, we can see how that works out. So yeah, I appreciate that. I wanted to finally double back, and then we'll definitely get into more of the forestry related stuff. And I appreciate that Dan Bauman had a update available to us, but I think we're kind of running along on time. So Dan, we'll hold that for you for a little bit if that's okay.
Scott, whatever you need.
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate it. We'll double back with you in the next meeting here. I think we kind of got a little deeper in the woods on the co-op side, which is exactly what we're meant to do. So that's exactly what I wanted to hear today. Finally, wanted to wrap up on, as I talked about earlier in the beginning of the meeting on rapidstogether.com, any shortfalls, any gaps, any concerns, any questions. We have made sure that this is wide open for anybody and everybody to add. We'd love to add your presentation, Margaret, to that. If you could email that to John.
I've got it.
Okay, good, perfect. That is a huge resource, and it's going to help a lot for contact information, everything else. Terry, are we still going PSAs and they're still working through that and everything's great there? Good. You can tell the analytics on the website are just amazing. So I think you guys have done a fabulous job on those. So we're getting a lot of contact information there. So if there's anything you see missing within the next week or so, please reach out to us. I don't have any other items for today.
Federal reps, anybody got anything to say?
Go ahead, one second.
I have one question, and it might be playing hardball, but has Verso opened their books to people that are interested in buying the paper mill? Because it's important to see what kind of profit they have right now.
Right, and that's what we finally had that initial conversation with MOLIS this week directly for the first time. So they finally gave us a contact person to work through. So I don't know exactly how far through that process they are, but we've been introduced to the individuals responsible for that. So we're no longer working with Adams St. John and Verso directly. We're working with MOLIS to try to get information from them. So we'll definitely have that available. Yes, Chad, go ahead. Yep.
I got a question. On the co USW wasn't an option. You'd have to go to like a public option. How do you even get something like that going? How do you start something like that?
Repeat.
So just for people online before you answer, it's just, if USW or other representatives aren't available to be a part of the co-op and there's a community option, how do we get community interested in doing something like that, and how would that work?
And that would involve, we would need some community champions that really wanted to bring people together. And then Kelly Maynard at the UW Center for Co-ops and myself would work to help inform and provide options to that group as the community group moves forward. So it'd be very much the community coming together with wraparound assistance help in that process. You would be surprised what can happen, especially under duress. People can come together with enlightened self-interest.
I was wondering too, they had said that, you should limit it to like 5% or something like that.
That particular group in Quebec, Canada, you could limit it to 20% or, 30,
I think we'll do it next week.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because Scott was talking about, well, there's maybe a donor here, a donor there, somebody's interested here and there, somebody's, and they have a larger amount of money they would want to invest, how that would work.
Yeah, we're, Missy Hughes and along with others have recommended to us to use an attorney out of the Twin Cities. His name is Ron McFall. He was an attorney that worked quite a bit with Organic Valley when they went from a 6-member co-op to the $1 billion organization that they are now, to help think through those very issues so that there's fairness and that no one gets stuck with too much undue pain compared to others. Very good questions you're asking.
So, I guess to add to that, yeah, we're kind of looking at two different things here. So you have the stock option for investors, which is different than actually the co-op ownership. The people that are in the steering committee are going to be going through some of those things, but from our perspective, it's more like cooperative ownership of it is more of an equal ownership. When we get 1 or 2 seats at the table, it's not based on how much money that an investor puts into it. That's kind of a different topic. So you're working with 2 different things here, really. Common stock
and preferred stock.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Basically, your cooperative people would be common stock, and your investors would be preferred stock. So two different options.
Mike, you had something?
I was just going to comment on the previous question about Verso opening up its books in general. Verso's a publicly traded company, so you can see Verso's results. But I think you're specifically referring to the Wisconsin Rapids Mill results, and those results aren't available to the public. You'd have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You'd have to be pretty far down the path of being a serious buyer before that would happen. But yes, absolutely, at that point, generally the way these things go is you would have access to all the financials.
Good.
Good information, thank you.
And then I saw we had a question online as well. Jackie, you had a question?
I think you meant Carrie. This is Carrie Jacqueline with Representative Kynes' office.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the screen wrong. Go ahead, Carrie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Just following up on what Amy Sue shared earlier, I did do a file share of the letter that Representatives Tiffany and Kind and Senator Baldwin sent on TAA, and then I also attached a letter that Representative Kind sent to Senate leadership on the federal pandemic unemployment compensation. I don't know if there's a better way to share. I can share it with John as well to share with the group, but it is on the Teams chat.
Okay, yeah, if you could get it to John and we could get it incorporated into Rapids Together into some of the resource files that we have there. So if you could share it with John directly, we'll get it shareable for everybody.
Okay.
Awesome.
We'll do. Happy to help and continue letting us know what we can do.
Good, we will absolutely do that. What did I leave off here?
I think for today, we.
Right. Oh, I remember the last topic for today. So we're getting close to butting up against the school year, right? So Mid-State's got availability for us throughout the summer. They've been great. It's been awesome to work with as a partner. We have to work on our availability with them throughout the next coming month, 2 months, and figure out what space we have available. So my intent is hopefully, as we've seen so much discussion today, relating to the co-op and steps that we can be using to share. I wanted to hopefully meet again next week, but I can't say for certain yet today without checking with Mid-State that we meet again next Wednesday, same time, 10 o'clock, virtual and in person. But just so committee members online and in person understand that Mid-State might be running up against some space issues.
Actually, I have that here.
Okay, Bobby had emailed you about information about that?
Bobby
Okay.
is way ahead of us.
Okay, well, that's good. Mid-State's a little further ahead of us, so may have to disregard that and. Oh, boy, gotta read. Wearing glasses. All right, okay, I see. So Bobby informed us that we've got different availability space here on campus, but it's still going to be available to us with capacity of 25 people, which I don't think we've really ever exceeded. So I don't think that's going to be much of an issue, but just understanding the world we live in, that we'll have to make do with that. So that would be the goal. I'm going to check with her directly before setting our next meeting for next week and make sure, but by the end of today, I will make sure that everybody has an email with the next date and time of our next meeting. Agenda would follow after that. Unless anybody else has any other specific conversations. I don't see any hands raised online, do you?
I don't.
Good, all right. Anybody, yes, go ahead.
So I have a letter that Congressman Tiffany sent to Adam St. John. I have paper copies here in the interest of time. I will put it out. You send it to your office, we're going to write it together, but if you're here and you want a paper copy, I have that.
Good, that'd be great too. We'd love to have that virtual, electronically as well, so we can share that. Great, thank you. It's nice to know that everybody's kind of on the same page there federally. That's good. With that, I think for today, we will be adjourned then. Thank you again, everybody, for coming, and thanks for sticking along with us for a little bit longer than usual. I appreciate it very much.
All right.
And it's nice to know Wisconsin has so many good cooperative statutes.
It does.
One thing we don't add to, that's great.
Yeah, our statutes are rock solid. And in fact, we